Hello, it's time for another video in the Gita series. Today we are looking at the Bhagavad Gita chapter 3 verses 17 to 19. However, anyone who finds bliss in his soul will enlighten his soul. A man who is satisfied with his own being will not have to perform any outer spiritual actions. Certainly, the performance of his duties would have no purpose, but there is also no purpose for him to avoid the performance of his duties. For in all of this world, he need not seek any purpose whatsoever. Thus, always without attachment, do whatever duties you will. By doing all work without attachment, a man achieves the highest. So if you'll recall, in the last video we were talking about this question of ritual, and Krishna was trying to explain to Arjuna that ritual was significant, but it wasn't significant for the reasons people thought it was, where they thought by doing the ritual I get something, right? Doing the ritual itself is what gets you something. It's not there's not an end goal after that is supposed to be the point. And here, Krishna gives the plot twist. He says that somebody who has found bliss in his soul, is the way he puts it, and becomes enlightened, is then satisfied with their own being. They do not have to then perform any outer spiritual actions. You know, a lot of people really have some unusual ideas about what enlightenment is, thinking that it's some kind of state of having superpowers, or that it's, on the contrary, something where you are somehow in some ways less than human in the way that people envision it, right? They envision being enlightened means, oh, you never have a bad day, you never suffer, you never have any pain, or that you are completely detached from existence, from the world, right? And that's exactly the opposite. Enlightenment isn't about being completely detached from the world. That's being catatonic or something like that, right? And having no sense of pain isn't something that would make you fully human, fully realized as a human being. It would be just the opposite. You'd have, you must have some kind of neurological disease if you can't feel negative emotions, right? That's less than human, not more than human. So enlightenment is a very tricky thing to define, as we've seen in previous videos here. But one thing you can say about the enlightened person is that they're completely satisfied within themselves, right? That there is, that they're fulfilled with their own being. There isn't an inner anxiety and inner emptiness and inner longing of purpose or things like that are what propels some people to look for enlightenment, but they look for it in the wrong places, right? They look for it either in materialism, or they look for it in this kind of spirituality that tells them one way or the other that's about what you do outside. And it's not ever about what you do outside. It's about what's happening within you, right? And you can't get there by trying to deny yourself or deny your being or deny anything in the universe. You have to be able to be open to it all, right? So what's being said here then is that a person who is satisfied with their own being does not actually have to do anything, right? There's nothing that they have to do. They're Nietzsche said beyond good and evil, right? There's no element to an enlightened person's being that is that obliges them anything, right? Speaking of Nietzsche, he talked in terms of this progression. What he called was first the the camel, then the lion, and then the child, right? And it's a very apt perception, especially coming from a Western philosopher, of this question of freedom, okay? Because first, most people are like the camel. The camel can only say yes. It has to obey. It has to fulfill its programming. It has to do what it's being directed to do or manipulated to do. It can't defy anything, right? So it's stuck saying yes. And a lot of people are happy camels, right? They're just happy going along, following their programming, doing what they're being told to do or what they've been trained to do, and thinking that they're autonomous, but really just following the track, right? Like you see this with everything. You see this with fashion, right? You see this with people trying to show how individual they are by buying an Apple product because an Apple product makes you super individual, right? So this is the camel mentality, right? And then there's a few people that kind of get woken up and they suddenly break free of this and they become these great, rebel types, right? And that is the lion. The lion breaks free of the chains of the camel. It roars and it defies everything, and it can say no, but it can only say no. It can't connect to anything outside of its own rebelliousness, of a rejection of all values, right? It has to say no because it's breaking free. But it thinks that by saying no, by rejecting license, by not buying an Apple product as a sign of just how individual they are, that this is liberation. But it's not really. You're still exactly as bound, right? If you're buying something because you've been told that'll make you an individual if you buy something, if you're not buying something because you think that'll prove you're an individual because you didn't buy it, then either way, you're trapped within the paradigm, right? So there's a third step, and the third step is the step of the child. The child is actually completely free, and it's free because it's free to say yes or no as it pleases, right? This is the crowned and conquering child of Crowley too, right? So one of the things to understand in what Krishna is saying here is that we have to get that we are all fundamentally free, and you can't just get that and say, yeah, we are all individuals, and say it en masse and things like that, like in Monty Python. But the process of spirituality is in great part the process of, that's why the Buddha called it liberation, of realizing that you are free and that you've always been free, that there's always been that freedom. It's not something that you get, it's something that you already had within you. And once you have that freedom, then you have the freedom to say yes or to say no to anything, okay? There's no reason why you have to, after that, conform to society. There's no reason why after that you have to continue with a spiritual practice or belong to, in this case, the Vedic religion, or things like that in Krishna's time. He doesn't have to seek any purpose whatsoever, right? But there's also no reason not to do these things, because now you are a free being, so you can do them in complete freedom. You can participate in the world in complete freedom. And then this leads to this question that has often come up for enlightened people. Is it better to be within society or to go away from society, right? And so Lao Tzu, for example, said, no, we don't have to do any of that, so let's go off and live in the wilderness, right? But Confucius said that's an irresponsibility, right? Because yes, most people aren't going to be helped by you anyways, so for those people you might as well go off into the wilderness. But some people can be helped, and also in the long term, the great work is the work of transforming all of humanity, right? So the greater progress is done by being within society. Confucius said that. Krishna said the same thing. He agreed with them. Buddha was kind of in between, but largely advocated continuing to be to continue to have influence within society, right? So in Krishna's perspective, he's saying you should continue to do these duties in order to even if you've kind of gotten to the point where you think that you are liberated from them, but you should continue to do them, because if you really are liberated from them, there's no reason why you don't have to do them, right? I've run into sometimes people who want to be students in the Yifa Society, for example, or before that in other classes I gave and things like that. And they would say, oh yeah, but I've been studying this for 10 years and I'm really good at it, so you should just let me go up into the higher levels of the training, right? And the answer to that I always present is, well, you know, I've been doing this for a really long time and I want to keep doing the absolute basics as much as possible, right? So if you're in such an evolved state, then you obviously realize that there's an enormous value in coming back to the very simplest practices and doing just those practices for a while. And if you're not in that state, then obviously you need to do those basic practices. So either way, you can start at square one with everyone else, right? This is kind of what Krishna is getting to here. He's saying, though, that when you do these things, whatever duties you have, when you're fulfilling these duties, do them without attachment. That is to say, without lust of result. Do them for their own sake, just like he said in the previous section that was covered in the last video. If you're doing this because you think that fulfilling your duties is going to lead to something, to beneficial karma, or that fulfilling your spiritual practice is going to lead to enlightenment, then you're going to miss the boat. Do the practices for their own sake, without lust of result, without attachment, and within those practices, not because of them leading to something else, but within them, you're going to discover enlightenment. You're going to discover liberation if you can engage with them and truly free yourself of lust of result. So that's all for today. If you like this video, please share it, pass it along, put it on social media. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube page, and especially to this playlist if you want to keep getting updates on the Gita, but to the Yifa Society playlist, which is where my current work is focused on. So, thank you very much.